So, how is pricing your photography part of your marketing? What a great question. And that's the question we're going to talk about in this episode of our live stream. And if you catch me live, of course, noon Eastern Standard Time on Fridays, you can ask your own questions about marketing and creating a profitable photography business. Here's the deal. If we all continue to have this conversation, we can just make the photography industry just a little bit healthier. And especially in your own community, if you're open with other photographers and have the conversations, I'm not talking about setting prices or colluding. I'm talking about just having the conversation about good business practices. And the more we can do that, the more we can have these conversations, the healthier our community can be, because we're getting the knowledge out there. And that's what this show is all about. Just sharing some knowledge so you can have a photography business that's profitable. And honestly, I think there's some good things that we can share with other photographers. So let's kind of get into this topic. And by the way, I apologize. I am late today because, well, I started streaming on the wrong channel. Yeah, that was embarrassing. But fortunately, nobody showed up on the other one because they weren't interested in how to price, photography. It wasn't their thing. If you catch me on the replay, of course, put your questions in the comments below. That is super important because I use your questions to help kick off the other shows. And you can catch me on Twitter at Rosh Sillars, and I'll be happy to answer your questions there too. Wonderful. Okay, so pricing your photography, and how is it a part of marketing? Well, if you are part of the philosophy, which I am, that marketing is everything related to the customer. In other words, everything that the customer sees or faces is related to marketing. And so traditionally, we thought, well, yeah, of course, if I'm the lowest price, they're going to hire me. Marketing. Well, that's not what I'm getting after, but there is a part of that. I mean, the honest truth is you can never win that game. Let's use an example. Let's say you decide to photograph weddings and you start doing this. You just give the CD away or downloads away for free. Hardly costs you anything on the post-production. I mean, there's post-production time, but maybe it's an hour and you're done. And you charge $500. Okay, let's say you get booked every single weekend. $500. How much are you making? Well, you're going to gross $26,000 a year. And that does not include taxes. And that does not include your cost of doing business, which is much more than you think. So honestly, you're not going to be making that much money. You're not living up. Now you're saying, oh, well, heck, part-time, $26,000 a year, maybe I can do that. But it's going to be tough. You're going to have if you're going to do that at $500 and to be your part-time thing, that means you maybe have a full-time, weekday job, and you're just doing the weekends. You get booked up like that. That takes a lot of your time. It takes away from family time and so forth. So, it means you're working 7 days a week, and it's not that much more money in the end. And chances are you're not that involved. You don't have a lot of extra time to market yourself and so forth. So you're going to have to depend on referrals, and that's going to take time. And so you're not going to have 52 weeks out of the year booked. The rare occasion somebody does, but by the time you get to the point of 52 weeks, you understand where your prices probably really need to be. So I don't diminish this when photographers who say, hey, but I am charging $500 for this and I'm happy with that. Fine. The problem is when they want to, become full-time photographers down the line. They're setting themselves up. They think they're setting themselves up to be a full-time photographer, but they're not, because they're diminishing their brand marketing. They're diminishing their brand in the first place, or setting their brand, setting their reputation. Your brand is your reputation. So if you're known as the super cheap photographer, it's going to be hard to break out of that. That's part of the marketing. And we're all judged. People are going to judge you if your price is really low or if it's really high. Maybe it's really high and they look at your price and say, well, obviously a high-end photographer, but we can't afford them. And if it's really low, then maybe you can't afford that photographer, or you don't want to use that photographer because you don't have the confidence. They may not be at the level you're hoping for. So it's not so much the price that I'm talking about related to marketing, although that is part of the game. I'm more talking about the process or the presentation of the pricing or the system that you put in place, the pricing system you put into place. Because, for example, I use per image pricing, and I have used that as a marketing tool to a great level. I mean, it really has helped my business, and using it as a marketing tool said, look, I have confidence in my photography. If you do not wish to purchase my photographs, you don't have to. But it's more than that. I mean, there are two parts to the story. There's the client's portion and my portion. My portion is not so important to the client, honestly. However, if part of my story in the conversation is that it keeps me accountable, it keeps me, if I don't do a good job, I don't get paid. That is keeping me accountable. And that benefits who? The client. Now, if I also say, by doing the per image pricing, you are also in full control of your budget. How does the client feel? Good. Now, that is not the only way to go about it. There are many different approaches. I guess what I want you to understand is that you need to have confidence in how you present your pricing to the client. How are you presenting it? And is the system that you're presented in a way that it benefits them without being the quote cheap photographer or below your cost of doing business line, right? So understanding what that may be. And for some people, it's an a la carte system for, say, wedding photography. I don't like doing a la carte. I like doing packages full, just, I know what I'm giving them and I know what the value is, and that's it. But some people feel like, look, I like to give them exactly what they want through a package a la carte system. That's fine. Just because I don't like doing it doesn't mean it's not the right way to go. For some, it is absolutely perfect because they have the confidence to sell it. So whatever you're selling, the confidence in what you are presenting to the client is probably the majority of whether price is an issue or not. If they can afford it, and you are confident and you are showing the benefits to them as to why your pricing system and you as a photographer with your portfolio and so forth, why it's there, then honestly, it's the way to go. I thought about this the other day, and I think this is very true, that if you are really confident in your business, in your photography business, you probably don't even need a portfolio. If you really do a good job as a photographer and people are referring you and you are confident in what you are giving them, a portfolio is backup. A portfolio is saying, look, I want to see what you're doing because I don't have confidence yet that you're the right photographer. Now, obviously, that's an exaggeration in the sense of, look, we are in a visual business, and showing our wares is certainly reasonable to ask, for someone to ask. So that's not, but if you really get down to it, in many cases, and I've thought through the years, there have been many situations where I've been hired without anybody looking at my portfolio or website. They just hired me because they felt that, I had the confidence through networking or just through referral. Hey, can you be there? Can you do this? What is the pricing? Or just after having the conversation, good, you're booked. Didn't even need to look at the portfolio. Now, I do highly recommend you have a portfolio. So no doubt about that. But it is something to consider. And maybe as a part of your business, maybe work to the point of feeling like, look, I'm only going to show my portfolio if asked. I mean, obviously it may depend on the type of photography that you're doing. Maybe I'm pushing the limits here, but I'm trying to think in terms of a sales exercise, see if you can sell without showing your portfolio. And if you can do that, you are probably on the right track. And then obviously the portfolio is the bonus. So maybe you should do a show on that. That might be interesting. Okay, I want to get into your questions. And I have a list of questions here. And of course, if you have questions while watching the replay, please put them in the discussion below, in the comments below. And of course, if you people come in live, I'm more than happy to answer your questions. If you want to catch me live, it is noon Eastern Standard Time on Fridays. It's not today. It was about quarter after, and that's because I was live streaming on the other channel where I do live stream on Mondays Eastern Standard Time. So I kind of book in the weeks. Fridays pricing, Mondays marketing live stream. Feel free to subscribe to both channels. Hit the bell icon. So, well, hey, so you are notified when I go live. That's the key thing, is getting notified when I go live so you can ask those questions. And it doesn't have to always be a specific, pricing question. Like, you'll find the questions here are not necessarily pricing, they're business questions. And I'm perfectly good with those too. This is really, a business of photography type channel. Pricing is our core, but that doesn't mean that's everything we talk about here, because there is a lot to it. There's a lot to running a photography business and being successful. And so I'm here to support you. Okay, here's the question. Do I accept credit cards? Should I accept credit cards? I would say these days, yes. There's so many different ways to go about it. You can hire a credit card processing company if you wish, but a lot of times maybe they have a lower swipe rate and so forth, but maybe there's another fee on top of that. It can be rather complex. Sometimes you rent equipment and so forth. But today, so many options are available to us, such as Square. And in some cases, you may pay a little bit higher rate. But if you're not a high volume photographer, if it's, look, you have, sometimes that's part of the closing. Hey, just put $500 down today and I'll reserve your date. And then you just swipe the credit card. If they have to give you a check or something else, then that may delay the opportunity, or just outright, you might lose the opportunity. So having a way to take a down payment immediately wherever you are mobile, I think that's a good way to go. I use QuickBooks, and QuickBooks has an option there. You can send that QuickBooks, or even PayPal. You can send invoices where they can pay. So there are a lot of ways you can go about it. Find the best one. I'm not going to necessarily recommend one over the other. I've tried many different ones. Just find one that is right for you, and have a way. Yes, definitely have a way to accept credit cards, because people expect it now. Very much so. And again, it can help improve your closing rate too. Okay, what's a good hourly rate to start with? Well, okay, so we have a number of videos on that, and most certainly, check out the cost of doing business. It's probably our mantra here. Cost of doing business. There is a cost of doing business video. It's the very first video that I did. Definitely worth checking out. And there's some other ones following that will help support you too. And I'll probably do another cost of doing business video soon, because it probably needs to be updated a little bit with some different questions and so forth, different approaches. So what is the best, again, that hourly rate? I generally don't do hourly unless it's an event. I can understand hourly for an event, but for other stuff, I don't do hourly. I usually do a package or per project price, or per image price. But, again, what I'm seeing, you shouldn't be under $100. I think no matter where you are, at least in the United States, you probably shouldn't be under $100 per hour. Where you are from there, even at 125, you're low. And I do charge 125 like for additional hours sometimes, but usually it's 175. Start off with 250, and it depends on the client. But that's being pretty candid about how I might approach it. But if it's a lot of hours, or if it's a smaller client, the image usage is also considered in there. How are those images going to be used? If it's personal, that's what I will consider. But I rarely go below that price at all. Usually I'm much closer to 200, but I do know a lot of photographers in that range. But I think these days that $100 line is where we are. And if you're close to that $100 line, you're probably a pretty inexpensive photographer, and maybe having problems staying in business too. Not because people don't want you, but because you're not paying your bills. Okay, so and that will always be a mantra here, of course. Okay, let's see. What sales skill do I need to become more profitable? That's a good question. I think the best sales skill that you can have is the ability to upsell. Upsell, and not in a shady way. I mean, give people exactly what you said you give them. Make sure it's of high quality. Do what you say you're going to do, but don't. I think one of the biggest mistakes people make in sales in general is to judge how much that person can afford for them. So you may say, okay, I think they've tapped out at $2,000. Well, they may have $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. You don't know. And they may want to spend it because they have plans for the photographs. So give them the opportunity to purchase more. And make sure you have a plan behind that to allow people to purchase more. And as I mentioned before, and I've mentioned a few times, incentive pricing. In other words, if somebody gets to a certain level, 2,500, 5,000, whatever it may be, the incentive is that you give them a really nice, valuable gift. Not necessarily, and it's not a discount. I mean, sometimes we give discounts. I think discounts are, people are they're blind to discounts. Some people are. I mean, it depends on the discount. If it's a really good discount, sure. But that 10% discount, whatever. But if you can give something of high value, maybe a very large canvas print or another book or whatever it may be, when they get to a certain level, that goes over pretty well, and that goes over in the regular retail space. I've been seeing this more and more. If you spend so much with us, we'll give you that. And that works in weddings and seniors and in things like that. When you're dealing, not so much in the commercial realm. Okay, so the ability to upsell, and one way to make it easier to upsell is to have incentives. That's where I go with that. Do I still need a website? Good question. Yes, you need your own website. I mean, a lot of times people think about Instagram or maybe Flickr or Facebook or 500px, pics, and they figure, okay, that's all I need for my presentation. No. You don't own those platforms. You need to have control. You need to develop your own website. A good WordPress site I like, but there's other platforms out there that are just fine. And so I would definitely consider that making sure you have a website. I wrote a blog post a number of years ago called Flickr is Not Your Portfolio. And this was over 10 years ago. And funny, Flickr was just purchased by SmugMug. So that's an interesting tidbit that just happened recently, last few days. So it'll be interesting to see what happens and what SmugMug is planning to do with Flickr. I mean, maybe there's some articles out there, but I haven't read them. I just know the fact that has happened. And so we'll see what happens. But yeah, these websites that are not your website, that's not your place for your portfolio. You don't have the customization. You don't have it's just not the right place. Now, in some cases, maybe you want to create a photo shelter website. Maybe that's the way to go in some cases. But I really do think you need your own domain. And I think that's the important part of it. Okay, next question. What's wrong with giving away a raw file? In parentheses, I save money. So yeah, you save money. What do they mean by saving money? Well, you save money because you're not doing a lot of post-production, okay? And that can be a very time-consuming suck. And look, a lot of us, a lot of photographers, let's just be straight, a lot of photographers do not charge for that post-production time because it's not client-facing. And not being client-facing, they feel like, well, the client's not going to pay for that, but I got to do this work anyway. It's like, no, it's for the complete job. That's why I don't do hourly so much, because it is harder to justify and say, okay, here's your 10-hour wedding price, and then here's the other 30 hours in post-production that I'm going to charge you, right? So that's why I like to do the per project or per image situation. I can bake that in the cake there. You can do that with your pricing too, with your hourly, but it's going to pump up your hourly. And of course, when you're talking hourly and people are used to working, $15, $25, $50 an hour on the high side, and you're coming along and say, yeah, $200, $300 an hour, they're like, huh? I don't make that. It's hard for them to swallow. It's hard. I mean, justifiable if that you think, wow, why should photographers get so much more money? And of course, as we know, we're not working 40-hour weeks. So that's why. The thing is, when you give people a raw file, now they're in charge of that post-processing. And your style is not put in there. You're just giving them, you don't know what's going to happen. And there's so many things that could happen to that file, and it represents you and your work. So if you're not concerned about how your work is presented later down the road, again, your reputation, then fine. But I don't think that is the best way to go, quite honestly, because I don't want to give somebody the opportunity. And not only that, you don't have any control of that image overall because they have the raw file, which is kind of like giving them the negatives. And giving people the negatives, there's some high value to that. And so if they really want the raw file, chances are they need to pay extra for that and not just make it, hey, I don't have to do anything on the back end. There's a lot to be considered when you hand somebody over the negative, and a negative that can be manipulated in a way that maybe doesn't make you look very good when the final product is produced. Okay. Hey, definitely catch my blog, roshsillars.com. @roshsillars is the Twitter. That's where you can ask questions anytime. I'm happy to respond to you. And of course, I encourage you to subscribe to these channels and ask your questions. We are here to work together to grow our businesses, our photography businesses together. I'm here to support you. I'm looking forward to talking to you next Friday, noon Eastern Standard Time. And I'll, of course, catch you with maybe a possible pop-in live or video during the week too. So maybe one or two of those. All right. I enjoyed it. Good questions. I enjoy the questions coming in. We're getting some very interesting ones. And I want to continue to support you to grow your business. You have a great day.